All right. So we're talking about the pain threshold. I want to start off with this thought. Your ability to succeed in life is directly connected to your pain threshold. And again, when we talk about pain threshold, what I'm talking about is how much pain can you endure to get to your intended goal before you give up? How much do you have to suffer through before you actually say, okay, I'm throwing in the towel? And the higher your pain threshold, the higher your pain tolerance, and I'm not just talking about physical pain. I'm talking about emotional pain, the frustration of trials, the sufferings of life. How much can you endure until you get to that point where you're like, I'm done with this? I've learned very quickly in life as an adult that pain is not always a punishment, right? Sometimes punishments can include pain, right? You know, maybe some of you have been given spankings before. Pain does teach us things, right? I think I told you this before, but one time we were singing that song, Lord, I thank you for sunshine. I thank you for joy. I thank you for, and Ellie's like, what? I thank you for pain. Why are you saying I thank you for pain? And I'm like, well, because pain teaches us lessons. We learn from pain, right? We learn a lot, especially when you got a thick skull and you're a hard-headed person, right? I feel like the harder-headed you are, probably the more pain you're going to go through in your life. Because hard-headedness almost always ends in pain that teaches us lessons. But pain is not always a punishment. Sometimes pain is just God's process of pruning. It's his way of taking away things from us that we don't need to have so that we can grow our character, right? So we can get ready for our calling. So I've noticed that there's kind of three responses to pain, right? And tell me kind of where you sit in the middle of this. And the reason why I noticed this is because it's kind of like the difference between my three kids. So I told you earlier we went outside today. It didn't last very long. Let me just preface the story with it didn't last very long. All three kids decide they're going to get on bikes and scooters and hoverboards and all the things, right? And so they're running around. Isaac's on a bike. Ellie's on a hoverboard. Bella's on a bike. And within maybe 5 minutes of being outside, Bella falls, okay? She falls over. She gets up. She's kind of like wincing just a little bit. She walks over. She's like, ooh, this kind of really hurts. And what should I do? Why don't you just go get a cold rag, wash it off, I tell her, and then you can come back out and play. And she's like, I don't know if I'm going to be ready to play or not, but I'm going to, it wasn't much of a fuss, just explaining that she was in pain. So she goes inside, she washes it off, she comes back outside, and she's like, well, now what am I going to do? I'm like, well, you could sit down and draw with chalk or something like that if you don't want to be active right now. And she's like, I think I'll just sit here. So she sits and she takes a break, right? So one response to pain is kind of like, it takes you back. You say, okay, I need a break from this. How many of you guys are I need a break people? Like once you hit it really hard, you're gonna need a minute to figure it out, right? To get back to feeling better. Well, a few minutes later, Ellie's on the hoverboard. She wipes out. Just eats it. And Ellie, on the other hand, she is my low pain tolerance child, okay? And she is screaming bloody murder. Let me explain to you what the damages were. She had 2 scratches on her knee, about yay big, a scratch on this hand and a scratch on this hand. Now, I get that when you scuff your hands on the concrete, it doesn't feel nice, right? It stings a little bit. But this girl, I'm going to pull the mic away because you guys I'll blow your eardrums out if I do what she did. She is like, this is in the middle of our neighborhood, and she's going, like screaming goat. I mean, completely losing it over 4 scrapes on her knee and her hands. So I go to her and I go, okay, Ellie, you're gonna have to calm down, okay? And I've learned with her, the more attention you give her when she's in that state, the worse it gets. Okay, there's a lot. And so you have to kind of play it down, pretend like nothing happened, don't make a big deal. The more you make a big deal of it, the worse it gets. And so she's screaming her head off. Our neighbors are probably thinking she got shot because that is the extent of the screaming that's happening. And I'm carrying her into the door, right? Because she refuses to move. And as I'm getting her inside, she goes, outside is a dangerous place. I think I just shouldn't go outside anymore. I take her to the couch, and I set her down, and I clean her wounds. And she lays there, and she continues to go, Now, mind you, I'm not laughing at her pain because I know it hurts. But sometimes seems like there are just some people that just have a really hard time with pain. It's a very difficult thing. And so there's the people who just kind of need a break. They're like, okay, that was a lot. I'm going to need a second. Then there's the people who just flat out give up. Outside is a dangerous place. I will never step foot outside ever again. It's like you do something and immediately you're like, I'm done with this. I'm not doing this. And then lastly, you've got Isaac. So I wondered how I was going to pull in my third point until we got to church tonight. And when we get to church, Isaac just eats it on the carpet. So all three kids have been injured today. That's how good we're doing, right? He tripped over somebody's purse while he was playing hide and seek and just whoosh, right? This dude immediately, he's on the ground, right? And he gets up and he goes, just immediately starts like doing all kinds of strange prancing. And I can tell he's still hurt because every few seconds he goes, but then he just like keeps dancing on, right? He's not going to let it stop him. And so this is our third kind of response to pain, okay? You've got your, I need a break kind of people. You've got your, I'm giving up kind of people. And then you've got your, you know what? I might as well just, I can't change it. I might as well just jump right back in and do it. Get back on the horse again, right? And so the question tonight is, which kind of pain threshold person are you? What do you do? And I'm not just talking about like little scrapes and bumps. They're kids. They've got plenty of time in their life to grow and to mature, and that's part of the process, right? I'm going to be perfectly honest. The reason I think they're like this is because Isaac has had some doozies of injuries, all right? This dude has, for the first several years of his life, he had something called breath-holding spells where he would hold his breath until he passed out, sometimes 20 times a day. Dude has had some pain in his life. In the process of that time, because he would constantly pass out, he has fallen off of a chair and got all 4 fork prongs stuck through his bottom lip. Yeah, holes, gaping holes in his lip. He has sliced his finger open on a mandolin. He has fallen off a countertop and busted his chin on the floor. This dude, when it comes to pain, out of all 3 of my kids, the one we've had the most hospital visits for has been Isaac. Now, I think that because the more pain you experience, the more you learn how to tolerate pain, he is the one that has the highest pain tolerance at this point in life. And now, I don't want any of my kids to experience pain, right? I don't want them to. But at the same time, it's kind of a fact of life, is it not? I mean, how many in here have broken a bone in their life? How many of you guys have had a sprain? How many of you guys have had a concussion? How many of you guys have had to get stitches? Has anyone in here never been injured? Not a single scrape. Like a scratch, like you've never had an injury of like where it made you bleed. Has anyone in here never even had to use a Band-Aid before? I don't think so. I think it would literally be like the chances of you getting to this age in life and never having any kind of incident, it would be slim to none, right? Unless you just live in a bubble. But pain is a fact of life, right? It's just part of it. It's something that we are going to have to learn how to deal with. And so I want to give you 5 important reasons for pain. Why did God allow us to experience pain? Why is pain a part of life here? So we're going to start off with our first one. Pain produces strength and flexibility. Everybody say it with me. Pain produces strength and flexibility. So Romans 5, 3 through 4, it says, just kidding. It says, we also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, character, and character, hope. Okay, so there is lots of character that's being produced in us with every hardship that we face. I think one of the greatest disservices that have been done to younger generations is shielding them from pain. Because the more you shield someone from pain, the less their tolerance for pain is. The more you shield someone from hard things and difficult things, the more difficult it seems when you're an adult. And when you're a child and you mess up or that you have a problem, people are a lot more gracious. But when you are an adult and you act like a baby every time that you get a scrape on your knee, people are not going to be as gracious. And so when we actually keep people shielded from pain and from hardship and from stress, what we are doing is we are setting them up for failure in the future. So when you look at your life and you're saying, oh, why have I gone through so much? Be thankful for it. Because in the midst of going through these things, you're learning how to be able to have a perseverant attitude. How do I keep going even when things get difficult? So this is a blueprint of how God uses suffering to build us, not to break us, right? The suffering's not meant to break us to the point where we can't go anymore, because that would do nothing for the kingdom of God. What motive would God have for wanting us to be broken down? Does that help him in any way, shape, or form? No, I mean, ultimately, even if God wasn't selfless, it wouldn't make sense for him to want us to be broken. Because we can't do anything to advance the kingdom if we're broken. So he uses the hardships and the trials of life to build us. So pain trains our spiritual muscles. We've talked about this 100,000 times. Just like lifting weights makes you stronger. We're going to go to James 1, 2 through 4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work in you, that you may mature and complete and not lack anything. So maturity comes from suffering. The more you suffer, the more you deal with pain, the more difficulty you go through, the more mature you will become if you respond to the pain appropriately. Now, if every single time you go through something hard, you decide to shut down and don't move forward, it doesn't matter how much pain you go through, you're not going to mature. But if you take that pain and you say, okay, I'm not going to let this be in vain, and you learn something from it, you will get stronger, and each time you will see your pain tolerance, your pain threshold increase. Your capacity to deal with things increases larger and larger and larger, which leads to my next point. You know, we're talking about not just strength, but flexibility, right? If you want to succeed in life, you've got to let God stretch you. And let's talk about stretching for a second. How many of you guys have ever done a split before? Who in here can do a split? You got this? Come on, girl. Come over here and show us. Can you do it? Anybody? Can anybody do a split that's willing to show us what it looks like? Okay, Trevor. Let's go. Is all you, broski? Okay, who's somebody in here who says, I don't think I can do it, but I'm willing to try? Anybody? I don't think I can do it, but I'm willing to try. Anybody? Come on, somebody. I used to be able to do it. I don't know if I can do it anymore. Should I do it? All right, somebody come do it with me. I'll try if you try. All right, ready? Here we go. Right here. All right, let's go. Let's see how far we can go.
Oh my God!
All right, so how did that feel? How did that feel? It hurts. Stretching hurts. Okay, let me tell you something. I used to be in dance as a child, and we had to do splits for our dance classes, okay? And in those dance classes, if you did not complete your split, the dance teacher would come over and put pressure on you until you dropped lower and lower and lower, and you'd have to hold it. Because the thing about stretching is that muscle does not stretch unless it's in a stretched position over a long period of time. Now, the good news is, as you can tell, I have not done a split in a very long time. But I think I so stretched out my muscles back then that I don't think they can go back to being unstretched. You know, the thing about capacity is that once you have it, it stays. Your capacity will stay large if you stretch yourself to that place. But people who have a small capacity, they cannot succeed in life because life is full of unexpected things, okay? So how many of you guys have ever experienced something unexpected? You thought things were going to be one way, and then they were something completely different. Anybody ever experienced that? What did you feel in that place? pain, embarrassment, disappointment. Sometimes it feels like it's better to not have any expectations at all, if you're being honest, right? Because when you expect something and it doesn't happen, that disappointment, it hurts. It stinks. It's not a fun place to be. But with every time that you encounter something that's unexpected, that creates that sting of pain, you become more flexible. Something that my grandma always says about me is she's always talking about how you don't complain about anything. You've got so much on your plate, but you just keep going. You just keep doing. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it. But the truth is, little by little, God added to my plate things, First it was one child, then it was a second child, then it was a third child, then it was other people's children. I mean, we've taken in a lot of people. And over time, when you have a household full of people that you're responsible for, that you love, that's a whole lot of free will you don't have control over. And the more you're in a position where you have no control, the more quickly you learn to be flexible. So now, whereas in the beginning of motherhood, when my children didn't obey it the first time, I would find myself getting frustrated. Now I almost expect it. And obviously, they have discipline. They're not allowed to do that, but I almost expect it. And I don't get my hopes up that every time it's going to be perfect. I don't expect my kids to be perfect all the time. And because of that, it's made me a lot more relaxed. And it's given them a lot more room for independence. They, as a kids, I remember when they were little babies, they would make a mess and I would freak out a little bit because I don't like messes, okay? I'm a clean freak. I like things to be clean. I like things to be neat. I like them to be ordinary or organized and orderly. That's my personality. But when you have this many people in your house, you can't always expect everything to be in its place, right? That's just a part of life. And so over time, whereas in the beginning I would start to get frustrated and I could feel anxious when things were all out of order, now I'm at the point where I've learned to just go with it. Okay, this is where it is. We're not going to be slobs. We're still going to take care of our stuff. But because I've allowed them to make messes without getting on their case about it, they've become incredibly independent in amazing ways. Like Ellie, she cooks us breakfast all the time. She makes scrambled eggs. There's been multiple times where I've come down in the morning and she's made me coffee and scrambled eggs. She's 7 now, but she started doing that when she was 6. That's pretty young to start making your own breakfast. And because there was an environment that wasn't fearful of messes, she was able to learn new things and know that she could grow, right? And so the same way that God has stretched me in teaching me to not fear the unknown and fear things being out of my control, he's now using that as a way to teach my children to be independent. To try new things, to step out of their comfort zone. And that's a conversation that we have with our kids all the time. There's a lot of parents who are hover parents, okay? They're the helicopter parents. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. But for me, I like to mitigate risk. I like to give them environments where they can try new things in the safest way possible. Right? I think that's a great role for parents. And it's something that you should think about in your own life. Okay, let's think about the risk. Is this risk worth the reward? If it's not, don't do it. But if you can do it safely and in a way that's going to possibly bring improvement to your life and your skills and your abilities, go for it, right? That's part of learning flexibility in life. That's part of why God allows for pain, because it teaches us how to be flexible. It teaches us how to step out of our comfort zone. And the more that we are out of our comfort zone and things are outside of our control, the more we can be dependent on God, knowing that he's going to work everything out. Because when it's not my job to fix everything and it's not my job to control everything, it means that I'm letting God do that, right? I'm letting him be a part of it. So flexibility is one of the single most important character traits of successful people. Things that I've realized with my kids is that, there are times where we're put in situations that are not always fun. Like, for example, sitting in the car waiting for somebody else. You ever been stuck in a waiting position and you're like, this is irritating, right? So I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago or a week ago, it was right before Easter. The boys needed to go to Marshall's to find a new shirt or something to wear for Easter morning, right? And so they're going into Marshall's. I have all 3 kids in the car, and I'm already thinking in my head, they are not going to like sitting here. It's going to be a minute, right? Because they probably would be about 20 minutes or so trying to pick something out and then go purchase it and all of that. But I parked the car, and Ellie goes, let's put on some music. So we put on music, we bump it up, we put all the windows down, we open the sunroof. They're having a full-on party. They were climbing out of the sunroof. Maybe that's not my best decision as a mother, but they were having a blast, okay? We're sitting there. I don't even know how long it was. We had so much fun, nobody noticed that we were stuck waiting. And life is really about that. Flexibility is about having a good perspective when things are outside of your control. Okay, so I can't control this, but I can at least still have fun. You know, when things are rough, when you're not enjoying yourself, when it's something that you have to do but you don't want to do, find a way to make it fun. Listen to a podcast you like. Listen to some music while you do it. You know, that's like the other day we were in the garage. We've been cleaning out our garage and setting up a new organizer. Everybody give a round of applause for my husband who put a new organizer into our garage this week. So Ben helped. That was awesome. You did too. You were moving stuff and cleaning up, leaves and all the things. So we worked together. Cleaning the garage, does that sound like a fun task? Nah, not really. But we're out there the day before they did all that, and we were just sweeping things up. And Ellie's sweeping, and she's like, oh, this is taking forever. And then all of a sudden, I pull my phone out, and I put some music on, and she goes, this is what we were missing. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, this is so much better. It makes everything better. Music makes everything better, right? And so then she's sweeping and she's dancing and she's dancing and she's sweeping. But all of a sudden, what was a horrible task now becomes something fun. And I think that's part of a huge part of success in life is learning to enjoy things when it's something that you don't really enjoy. How can we make this enjoyable? How can we actually find a way to get this done? Because this is our responsibility. This is what we have to do without totally losing it, right? So the first point was pain produces strength and flexibility. The second point is pain exposes your propensity to default to excuses. Do you hear me? Pain exposes your propensity to default to excuses. There are some people in life who every little tiny pain is an excuse to get off of work or to get out of school. Who of you are those people? There's got to be a few in here. How many of you guys have a little scratch in your throat and you go, oh, Mom, I can't go to school today. It's too much. But that's the thing about pain. As soon as you have pain, all of a sudden you find out whether or not you are truly interested in accomplishing a goal or if you have an excuse. If you're going to make up excuses, if you really want it or you really don't. The second that you are, it's kind of like, everybody wants to be healthy, but a lot of people don't want to do what it takes to be healthy. It's painful. It doesn't feel good. And so the second that pain hits is the moment that you expose, okay, how serious am I actually about this? Actually getting there, actually having this goal. How serious, and I think about, in the New Testament, all of the disciples who followed Jesus, they left everything. They left their whole lives behind to follow him. And not only did they leave their whole lives behind, but most of them ended up being martyrs for their faith. That's real suffering. How many of us today would be willing, when the pain hits, to say, actually, I believe in this. I don't care what it takes. I don't care what it costs. This is what I'm doing with my life. I'm following Christ. I'm going to do exactly what God called me to do, no matter how hard it is. And that is why the disciples were able to do so much in the world. How they were able to go from 12 men in a back room and a couple 100 followers to a church that spread like wildfire all throughout European regions and then across the globe. I mean, just a few men were able to accomplish that because they were serious about it and they didn't let pain stop them. How much more could we do as a church on a global scale to actually change the world if we had the same fortitude and the same pain threshold as they had? So number 3, pain prepares you for your purpose. I think about the story of Joseph. You guys know who Joseph is. Joseph went through a lot. Poor guy was hated by all of his brothers, thrown into a pit, put into slavery. Then he gets all these allegations by Potiphar's wife that he was trying to seduce her, which that wasn't true. Poor guy is doing everything right and everything is just going wrong. He ends up in prison, or so he thinks, and he's ministering to people even in prison. He's still staying faithful to the call even when the pain is immense. And just when it seems like there is no hope, there's nothing left, God elevates him from the prison to the palace. And overnight, he's this influencer over the entire country, second in command only to Pharaoh, where he's able to actually save a whole generation of people because of the wisdom that God gives him. That is a high pain threshold. That's what I call a really high pain tolerance, because he went through so much and yet he refused to give up. In Genesis 50:20, it says this, "You intended me for harm, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done in the saving of many lives." Pain didn't mean that God had abandoned Joseph. It meant that God was preparing him. It meant that God was doing something in him. Number 4, pain connects you to Jesus. There is no one who suffered more than him. Not a single person went through more than he did. He was literally abandoned by everyone that had followed him, aside from a few people, handful of people who stayed at the cross with him while he was being hung. And so you're not alone in your suffering. Jesus gets it, right? He knows, he understands pain. He went through every kind of pain. He went through physical pain. He went through emotional pain. He went through betrayal. He went through rejection. He went through even spiritual pain of just how hard it is to stay in the will of God when everything is painful, when everything is hard. Hebrews 4:15 through 16 says this, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses. So let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need." Where do you turn when you're in pain? Who do you turn to in that moment? Because the truth is, when we're in pain, we want comfort. We want nothing more than to be comforted. And God is saying, hey, I know that pain is part of the process. I know that pain is part of the pruning. I know that pain is going to produce something purposeful in your life. But I want you to know that I'm there in the middle of it with you. I've been there. I've experienced it. I've gone through it. I know what this feels like. So Jesus isn't distant in our suffering. Psalm 34:18 says this, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He rescues those whose spirits are crushed." The next point is pain is useful. So you can either let pain make you bitter, or you can let God use you to make you better. Some of the most impactful people in life and faith are people who allowed God to take their pain and give it and turn it into compassion and empathy. I mean, when you've experienced something hard, you have a whole nother level of empathy for people who are going through something hard. You know, it's like, it's hard to have empathy and grace for people who are going something that you don't really understand. But when you've been there, you've experienced it yourself, it gives you a whole nother level of compassion. You know, when you've seen the suffering, when you've been there, you've gotten a diagnosis, you've understood all the thoughts that are racing through your head. Now all of a sudden, you know how to comfort that person who's now going through that same thing. And so pain has a use. It has a purpose, because there are a whole world of people who are experiencing pain without the presence of Jesus. And God wants us to be that carrier that comes and shows people, hey, you don't have to go through this pain alone. You don't have to endure this by yourself. You can let God use it and make it to be something that's not in vain. The thing about giving up is that the second that you give up, you're making your pain be in vain. If Ellie does not go back outside and learn how to ride her hoverboard after this, that pain was in vain because she didn't learn a single thing from it. But if she has the fortitude to go back outside and say, you know what, I'm not giving up, I'm going to jump back on the hoverboard, I'm going to try this again. Well, now how many memories will she get to make that are fun in the future of her riding her hoverboard? There's a benefit there. There's a lesson to be learned there. And it's the same with us. When we go through hard things, how are we responding? Are we really going to let the pain be in vain, or are we going to let it teach us something useful? 2 Corinthians 1:3-4 says this, "Praise be to God who comforts us in all of our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God." Pain is not the end of the story. This is the most important part. Our pain is not eternal. When we get to heaven, there's going to be a day where it talks about how we won't have a tear in our eyes. We won't have suffering. There will be no sickness. There will be none of these things. There's going to be a day where pain does not exist anymore. And if we choose Jesus, if we choose to walk with him, to allow him to use these things as pruning, we will get to that place of reward, that place where there is no pain. 2 Corinthians 4:17 says, "For our present troubles are small and won't last very long, yet they produce for us a glory that vastly outweighs them and lasts forever." So pain is temporary, but the lessons you learn from them are eternal. The lessons you learn from going through these hard things, those are what, that growth in you, that's what's eternal. That's going to stick with you forever, even into the next age when we move on to heaven. So what's your pain threshold? Are you willing to push through with God? Are you willing to trust that he's doing something bigger in you than what you can see in front of you? Are you willing to take your pain and say, okay, God, I'm going to trust you with this. Show me what it is that I can learn from this. Philippians 1:6 says this, "Being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ." Keep going. Keep trusting. Your pain has a purpose, and your success is on the other side of your perseverance. Say that with me one time. Your success is on the other side of your perseverance. Can you persevere in the middle of pain? Can you go through something hard and choose not to give up? Because that is the thing that's going to make you successful in life. That's the thing that's going to get you the furthest. So we've got a few minutes left before we have to close out here. I want to ask you a question. Can any of you give me maybe a story of a time when pain helped you grow? Yeah.
So second day of sixth grade, and Allison and I just got off the bus, and I decided that, I decided to ride my little cousin's scooter, and I don't even know what I think I was talking to myself, and I was like, riding with one hand, and I fell off, and I broke my foot.
Oh, boy.
And they didn't believe me because I'm a crybaby and I cry about everything. So they didn't believe me for like the first 9 hours that my foot was broken. And I went to the hospital and it was like broken, whatever. But the way I grew was like, I feel like now I have a higher pain tolerance. And like when I'm actually hurt, when I'm not hurt, I don't. Just like do Addison.
She's saying it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf, right? Like you learned a lesson that's like, okay, if I make a big deal of everything, nobody's going to actually believe me when something big is actually happening. Like I have to find a way to like, yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I appreciate you sharing that because we all have that in our life and sometimes it's not even just like with pain. Sometimes it's like with getting attention. Like maybe you have this void inside of you and you're like, man, I need attention. I need somebody to notice me. I need somebody to recognize me. And so we do all these things to try to get attention over and over and over again because we have this void. But then when you really need someone, no one wants to give you attention because you've kind of worn out your welcome overdoing it, trying to get people to, do the things that you need them to do for you over and over and over again. That's an important lesson in life. So anybody else, a time when you experienced something painful that like taught you a really good lesson? Seems like you got something. You got something. Yeah.
So for my birthday, I got like forever ago, I got a scooter that went like super duper fast. And I was maybe about like 7 at the time. And I decided that it was gonna be a good idea to jump off of or like it was like a really high sidewalk. And I tried jumping off of it and I fell off the scooter and busted my knee open and I needed stitches. So I learned not to do that.
Yeah, that's not fun. She said, I learned not to do that. Fair. Good lesson. Don't take risks if they're not safe. What happens when they take you to get stitches?
I'm kind of like not really allowed in the hospital now.
Did you freak out about the needles?
Yeah, I tried grabbing the needle from the doctor and he screamed in my face and told me I wasn't allowed to grab the needle and my mom had to hold me down.
Wow. Fair. Okay, so pain is just not your thing, huh? Yeah, she said, I've learned my lesson. Yeah.
So when I was younger, I didn't have shoes on and I was running around outside and there was glass. My mom told me do not go outside, so I was gonna listen. And I ran around outside. I had to get stitches in the bottom of my toe and in my knee.
That is not fun. Yeah.
This was maybe like a month ago. I've
on a folding chair. Always a bad idea.
Very weak, flimsy folding chair, and I was like leaning over trying to do stuff. Anyways, picking us up, I hit my head.
Oh, youch. You ate it. So you learned not to stand on folding chairs, I'm assuming. Any other lessons? Valuable lessons you learned?
Yeah, use a step ladder if you have one, which I did.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm trying to think of times.
It's gone worse though.
What about like emotional pain? You learned a lesson from an emotionally painful thing. I can think of a lot of times where my parents told me like, "Hey, I don't think this person is a good fit for you. Please don't hang out with this person, or I don't think you should get really close to this person." And then I did anyways, and then it ended up being super toxic. And then you're like, "Yeah, I really should have listened to that." I think that they have a lot more insight than I was giving them credit for. There was plenty of those times in my teenage years, I could say for sure. Yeah. Or like times that like you put yourself out there with the wrong person and felt like immense rejection, and then you're like, wow, I really need to have better discernment on whether or not these people are the right people to be spending my time with. Or maybe like just going somewhere that you weren't supposed to go and something happened that wasn't supposed to happen because you were in the wrong place at the wrong time. You ever had that happen before? And you learn from that. You're like, maybe that was not a good idea. I should not be found in these places ever again. There's some places you just shouldn't go, right? Anybody else? A story of time where they experienced pain and it taught them a lesson? Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like really upset about folding and stuff, but I think I learned a lot
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of helps you to like have a different perspective, and the fact that like you can't take your relationships for granted because they're not always going to be there. Yeah, for sure. I've been through that. How many of you guys have lost someone close to you before? Yeah, that will teach you a lot. I mean, just in the realization of, oh wow, life is not forever. Like, there is going to come a day where this is all going to end, and if I really want to enjoy life, I need to like not take the people for granted that are around me. I need to really appreciate them rightly and spend the time with them and connect with them, while I have that time. I'm going to ask you one more question before we close out tonight. How do you think we can better support each other through tough times? Because I think that's a huge part of church. Church and fellowship is really about learning how to be there for one another in the midst of pain. Because God shows us what it's like to be there in the midst of our suffering. But how can we help each other in the midst of suffering? Like, let me just start with this. Nobody likes an I told you so person. Anybody enjoy that? I remember there was one time when I was first, the girls were first learning to walk. I think it was actually Ellie. Ellie was first learning to walk, and she was falling like all the time. And I'd asked her not to try to take the steps by herself. And I'd set her on the side, and I said, hold on, I'm going to go get one thing. And I come back, and there she is going down the stairs, and she just eats it and falls on the ground. And I pick her up, and I go, why would you do that? I told you not to do that. And I literally, as I'm saying it, go, that does not fix this. She's still hurt. She's still crying. That does not solve anything right now. What I could do for her right now is just hold on to her and say, I'm sorry that happened. And hopefully the pain will teach her the lesson in and of itself. But at this point, she's already experienced the consequence. So me just shoving it down her throat and being like, you dumb kid, that's not going to fix the problem, right? That's not going to fix it. So I think that's one lesson I've learned over parenting is that, like, you've got to be willing to say the things that need to be said, but, like, in the midst of the pain is not the best time for you to be like, I told you so. I knew this was going to happen. You always do this. Because that just brings more shame, I think, than it does actually helping somebody learn from their stuff, right? Anybody else? What's a way we can be there for people in their pain? Yeah, a good listener. That's huge. There's a lot of people who just need to talk. They just need to get things off their chest. And it's amazing how healing it can be for people to just release what they've been holding on to internally. Anybody else? Any way we can be there and in tough times for each other? Yeah, Trevor.
I think paying attention to the people that you're close with, and when you notice something's off, asking the question. Because a lot of times, how many times have we asked someone, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing really
Good. Yeah.
really inside, whether it be something happening at home, at school, at work, wherever you're at, in a relationship, what have you, most people are, a lot of people might be suffering behind that first answer. So
Yeah, it's good.
attention to the people that you're close with and know how to ask the right question.
That's good. Just being observant. And that's an easy one to miss because everybody's so busy. I mean, everybody has so many things. We all have lots of things we're involved in, and sometimes you're just not thinking about it. It's not that you don't really care about people. It's just you're trying to get from one place to the next and get everything crossed off your to-do list, and you just don't recognize when it's happening. And I think on one hand, you can't take on being someone's savior, right? Because that's Jesus' job. But at the same time, you can be that person that helps guide them to Jesus in the midst of their pain. You can be that person that's like, oh, hey, let me stop and pray for you for a minute. That does make a huge difference. All right, well, it's 8:02, so I'm going to pray for you guys, and then I've got one announcement, and then I'll let you go. Father God, I thank you so much for this time together, Lord. I just ask that you would help to increase our capacity, that you would stretch us so that we can handle the difficulties of life without crumbling, without giving up. Lord, we need your strength. We need your grace to be able to keep going forward even when things are not going the way that we want them to. Lord, I just pray for a greater flexibility in life when things are not the way that we want them to, that we would focus on you and what's eternal and not get so stuck on the temporary things, that we would truly see what's important in your eyes, and that we would work with you in that, and that we would not forsake that growth that needs to be taken place. Lord, just help us to grow in the greatest ways possible so that we can really walk in purpose and not let our pain be in vain. In Jesus' name, amen.